Welcome to the NoJetStress Podcast, where we explore traveller wellbeing solutions for business and frequent flyers seeking to conquer jet lag and live healthier lives. I'm your host, Christopher Babayode, ex-flight attendant, traveller wellbeing advocate, nutritional therapist, and author. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about wellness tools that are specific to well-being as a frequent business traveller. I'd like to try and set the stage. And in doing so, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about wellness kits, amenity kits that are given out to business and first class travellers on airplanes. I wonder if you know the history of these amenity kits. They started in the 1930s and they had very basic things in them like cotton balls and chewing gum to help you manage the loud noises that came from the engines and things of that nature. Then they evolved a bit, and we now have items that are particularly branded, that are, I guess you would say, more luxurious. And the question is, do they really cater to the needs of the modern traveller? To a certain extent, I guess if you like branded items and you like the socks or eye masks or the adapters that some of these products have, then that's great. What we want to do is look at these products in the context of well-being. In fact, in this episode, we're going to make the case for having items that are specifically useful in a wellness context for business travellers. As a recap, let's look at the health challenges that we need to address as frequent flyers. You can start and talk about the cabin pressure or the idea that you want to mitigate the dry air that you always get on the aircraft. And the fact that if you travel often, the different destinations you go to also pose a problem of being different, and therefore your body's constantly having to adapt in order to make sure that you maintain your health in these varying environments. One of the things that I say to clients and prospects is that the cabin environment is an alien environment. At 36,000 feet, it's quite dry. There are more microbes available to potentially disrupt your health. And to a certain extent, your immune system can be weakened a bit by being in an aircraft cabin on a regular basis. Your mucous membranes are one of those things that is impacted. And it's quite important to note that in today's episode will be one of the touch points. We'll talk about how we manage the mucous membranes, our health, the fact that the airflow is different on an aircraft, and the kind of things that we can do to alleviate all of that and maintain our sanity and our health. So with that in mind, I'm going to introduce my guest today, Harri Lahtela of WellO2, bringing a product to the market that helps specifically better manage your breath in various contexts, which we're going to get into. So I'm going to shut up for a minute now and say welcome to Harri and ask him to introduce himself.
Hi, Chris, and thank you for having me on the show. So, my name is Harri Lahtela. I am the independent consultant helping to launch the WellO2 product in the UK market. I've been in the health and wellness sector for the past 20 years. First half, I spent working with the public sector, chronic illnesses, selling systems to the NHS. And then the second half, I have been working with more direct-to-consumer wearable devices. Most recent thing, the WellO2.
I would ask a couple of questions to start off. Do you fly frequently yourself?
Not as much as I used to, and my flights are usually quite short, mainly in Europe, but occasionally, maybe once a year, I fly long distance.
Right, cool. So the reason I ask is I want to try and get a first-hand experience of yours, of what you feel about the aircraft when you travel, how it impacts you, and how you feel that the WellO2 device might fit well with someone who travels.
Sometimes I do worry a bit about all the germs and pathogens that I'm breathing in on the plane. So if I can, I travel with the WellO2 device and moisturize and cleanse my airways and lungs after a flight. That includes my nose and the mouth. That's what I've been doing. But like I said, most of my travel is quite short distance. And I think the dryness of the air in the cabin being an issue for someone else.
Right. And that's partly why I'm excited about this, because once again, I'll come back to this theme that I have, that we send men to space with a kit, so to speak. They wouldn't go into space without that kit because they die without the oxygen and all the other markers for their physiological health that are put in place that help them maintain equilibrium in a foreign environment. And we may not go to space, and we may be at subsonic speeds when we travel on aircraft, but at the same time, it is an alien environment. It is pressurized to 36,000 feet, anywhere between, I think, is it 6,000 to 8,000 feet, like the pressurization you would expect to find at base camp if you are trying to summit one of the bigger mountain ranges in the world. As such, it's a foreign environment, and we need tools to help us manage that environment if we are frequent travelers to maintain health. That's where, for me, the excitement about the WellO2 device really comes into its own, because I've been a frequent traveler for 20 years, working for one of the UK's largest airlines, and I really understand what it's like. You get dry skin, if you fall asleep, you wake up thirsty, you have more positive ions in the air, and there's a specific way that the air is filtered on aircraft that, while it gets us from A to B, is not ideal and can really impact us. And the WellO2 device is one of those things that can help you manage that, even though you can't necessarily use it in the moment. But before your trips, during your trips, when you're down at the hotel, and when you're back home, it's one of those tools that I would argue could fit quite neatly into any frequent traveler's plans in managing their health in a very specific way. So please tell us a bit more about the device's functionality and how it works.
Yes, so WellO2, we combine warm steam with resistance breathing, and that's our USP. So it looks a bit like a kettle. You can heat up the water, you put a bit of water in it, you heat up the water, there's 3 different temperature settings. And as a result, steam forms, and you breathe that steam in through a mouthpiece, which has a built-in filter in it that provides resistance, breathing in and breathing out. And the idea is that the warm steam that humidifies and cleanses your airways and lungs, and the resistance bit is for strengthening your respiratory system. So muscles that support your respiratory systems, diaphragm, the muscles around your rib cage, and your neck muscles. That's the hardware bit. And then we also have an app which has exercises for different user cases, voice maintenance, reducing stress, helping you to sleep, etc. So, and finally, we do have an accessory called Smart Mouthpiece, My Breath, and that allows
the Smart Mouthpiece, My Breath, correct?
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
And that allows users to see the level of effort they put in when they do the exercises, and record them and track their progress over time, and keep themselves accountable doing these exercises, hopefully on a regular basis.
And that's one of the things I really love about the device. But before we get to more of that, I will at this point stop the knowledge that you're sharing here to say specifically that it is a medical grade device, but we make no claims here as to the use of the WellO2 machine for any specific medical condition. That's important to lay out for our listeners. At the same time, while there can be benefits for all kinds of users, we are particularly interested, or I am, and I think my listeners are particularly interested in the performance, what I like to call the performance athlete traveler mindset use of this device. It's best encapsulated with the idea that as a performance traveler athlete, as I like to call business travelers who are concerned and look after their productivity and their well-being, the important thing for them is how they manage their health so that they can continue to be productive and be successful in doing business wherever they travel around the globe. That's really, really core to that. I feel the WellO2 machine is one of those things that can help people do that by working in tune with our physiology.
Absolutely. Breathing is quite paramount to our health and well-being, and a strong, healthy respiratory system help you to, that's your first line of defense against germs and pathogens out there.
The immediate benefits then are the airways remain clean and open through using this device. It helps relieve respiratory irritation, and it protects the mucous membranes. Now, I saw some of the research done by WellO2 that talks to the idea of how we must acknowledge that the mucous membranes are literally part of what you talked about there, the first line of defense, and the fact that they get dried out when you are on an aircraft at 36,000 feet, having air that is taken from outside the aircraft. It has a quality to it. It's dry. It tends to be sterile. It has to be passed through filters in order to make its way into the aircraft. These things tend to dry out the mucous membranes, and therefore, if you were to get off an aircraft and go into an environment where there were a high amount of pathogens or germs that were breathed in, potentially you may be at a disadvantage because that protection is no longer there. And that's something that I think is worth noting and highlighting for every listener, because that's something that is very real and something that the WellO2 machine, when used on a regular basis, can help address. And then, it helps provide material symptom relief for any type of congestion that you may have with breathing. Does that sound like the properties that you're familiar with as far as what the WellO2 can offer in terms of immediate benefits?
Absolute spot on. I think not just for flyers, but traveling on the tube in London, it's full of pathogens. Yep. So air travel and beyond, healthy airways, healthy respiratory system is your first line of defense. And if possible, before getting on the plane, moisturize the airways so you can fend the germs off whilst on the plane. And then once you get off the plane, get to your hotel, possibly use it again to try to eliminate and get rid of any germs, pathogens that have accumulated or entered the system whilst on the plane.
I found that so you have the kettle, the round shaped kettled aspect of it that you boil the water in. Mm-hmm. And then you have some contraptions, as you mentioned, that you can adjust the resistance element. But what I found fascinating was the fact that you have a nasal piece as well as 3 regular mouthpieces, and then the My Breath breather that is connected to an app that is also particularly good. And I think for the performance-minded people, we can tend to be sometimes, that would be the most exciting part of the setup, because you can take the My Breath piece, add it to the kettle, and the app will give you readouts of how well you are progressing in managing that capacity. Using that combination really helped me see the benefits of the device in use and gives me more encouragement to actually use it on a regular basis. So I slot it into my habits in the evening because it's great in that respect as part of a habit, but it also has some added benefits, which I must remember to come back and mention when we talk about VO2 max. So with that said, I want to sort of quickly pivot to the long-term benefits of using the device. Are there any anecdotes or stories that you know of that demonstrate exactly how it's been able to be used for people?
Yes, there's many stories. My dad, he's an elderly, good example, he's an elderly gentleman nearing his 80th birthday and enjoys singing. And just recently he mentioned that he can't project his voice like before, so he feels that his singing is weak. Well, of course, I've got him a device and he's currently training, and already after a few weeks, he has noticed some improvement in his ability to sing and project his voice. So I think that's a great example of what it can do to just a normal person. We have a lot of people who have found it useful helping them sleep better. Breathing exercises in general, they stimulate your vagus nerve, which in turn activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So it will allow your nervous system to calm down before you go to bed. And then hopefully that, combined with clear, well-moisturized airways, allows you to get more uninterrupted, more peaceful sleep, which in turn has huge benefits during the day then.
Well, some of the specific data points that you've mentioned there, the one that really impressed me was the idea that it can improve respiratory muscle strength by up to 20% with constant use. And that, I understand, was taken about a month. Now, obviously, we're all individual and we all have different modes of practicing and lifestyles. So you may not necessarily get that But to see that number, that's quite encouraging. When I started using the device in the evenings, I track my sleep with the use of the Oura Ring and a Whoop device, and I saw my heart rate variability improve. And I know it's a joke between, well, I don't know if you consider it as a joke. I do, between the two of us, because I remember when I first met you and we were looking at HRV readings, and I had mine in the low 20s or something like that. And yours were like in the 70s. And it was before I understood that there is actually a hereditary component as well as a lifestyle component to HRV readings. But at the time you mentioned that you're an avid tennis player, so you've always had that, and that may have been reflected. So while I may have walked away a bit disheveled, I'm pleased to say that I can now say that my HRV readings are now in my 30s and improving. And this is something that I can only attribute to using this device on a regular basis, because that's the only other thing that I know that I'm doing specifically different, that I can account for the increase in my heart rate variability readings. That translates to a very interesting tool to use, but heart rate variability for me is a really important metric for travelers, frequent travelers, and generally for other people who want good health. But for this audience, travelers to be able to improve upon as they go about their work and supports a nice balance in terms of their sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, so that they are able to recover well and perform well.
Absolutely. And no worries, Chris. You look happy and well to me. So your HRV is just fine. It's just happens that your baseline is low, but you have managed to improve, which is great to hear.
Yeah. So some of the other highlights for the benefits of later, as you mentioned, quality sleep, speeds up recovery and boosts the immune system function. And this I would put down to the fact that we have the two sides of the immune system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And one of the things I learned through delving a bit deeper into heart rate variability is that the parasympathetic, even though that's the technical name, if you like, it's the rest and digest side. And the more we're able to dip into that, the more recovered we can be from the fight or flight sympathetic side that we tend to be in when we're out and about in the world doing the things that we do. So being able to address that balance before I go to sleep gives me deeper recovery while I'm sleeping. It also tends to allow me to get better non-REM deep sleep, which is one of those pain points for quite a few business travelers, the ability to get quality deep sleep. And just to underline that, the importance of that is it's what allows you to be physically well rested. And as we know, you've got two parts of the jet lag problem. You've got the fatigue from travel, and then you've got the jet lag aspect, which is the desynchronization of the body clock, your circadian health. So to get something that actually comes into the picture, I mean, using the WellO2 device is something you can do in the space of 5 minutes, 5 minutes in the evening, or in the morning, or whatever routine it is that you have, that can give you that benefit when you persist and you create a habit of doing that. So that's important. And I want to sort of like come on to talk about VO2 max. What have you seen, or what do you understand how WellO2 may relate to improving or supporting VO2 max?
So we haven't done any scientific studies in this context, but we have many in one observations. Their VO2 max has improved as a result of consistently using WellO2 over a period of time.
Right. And that is really important to underscore. The reason why I still bring this up specifically is because the leading research talks about was the fact that VO2 max and your ability to maintain VO2 max, decent VO2 max improvements or scores, is a predictor of longevity. And that being the case, we all want to live long and healthy lives. It has usefulness in that regard in and of itself. And current wisdom says that yes, VO2 max will decline naturally, but it's the things you can do upstream that can actually help you delay the rate of decline are the things that are going to help you in the long term. And I would argue that the WellO2 device slots into that category. I mean, when I breathe and use it, I can already feel literally the benefits, in as much as my diaphragm works stronger, it works harder, it expands more, And some of the benefits of that relate to respiratory health, as well as me being able to give my organs a massage, because the diaphragm is a muscle that tends to be underused, and working against resistance with the WellO2 device is something that puts that in play and forces you to use it better. So I'm really grateful for that. And the correlation between VO2 max and lifespan is something that is really important to grasp for our listeners and anyone who wants to maintain health. With that said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe West Ham Football Club in the United Kingdom use the WellO2 device themselves for their players. Can you speak to me a bit about that from what you know?
Yes, so we are respiratory health partner of the West Ham United here in the UK. Players, they use the device to help them recover better, sleep, recover better, as well as maintaining the healthy mucous membrane and fight the germs and the irritants that are everywhere.
You're right.
So they remain healthy, so they can train and they don't miss any matches. So those are really the two key aspects: is fighting the germs as well as aiding them in recovering from training. And also quite exciting here in the UK. Just earlier this week, we launched our first retail partner, which is Well Pharmacy. So little by little, the product is getting out there, and hopefully more and more people hear about it in the weeks and months to come.
I mentioned how I go about using the tool. In the evening, when I get in, I sit down with it, put it on for 5 minutes, and I use the My Breath trainer, or sometimes I don't. Sometimes I use the nasal piece. I just get into the habit of using it, even for 2 minutes. I create a routine. Do you have any ideas or suggestions or anything else you want to add to how people might want to use it?
Yeah, I have some personal experiences that I think are quite relevant. Using it in the evening, I feel quite energized after doing the harder exercises. Possibly avoid doing the hard exercises before going to bed. I use maybe no resistance, just breathing in the steam, just long, deep breaths. So that's one. Again, it depends on what you want to achieve. For travelers, business travelers, I think talked about flying and using it before and after, but staying in hotels, air conditioning, that can be an irritant to your throat, to your airways. Well, energizing bit. So if you are fighting jet lag, you might want to do it first thing in the morning to get a boost and get your day started. Before this recording, I did a session, so I cleared my airways, so my voice sounds hopefully clear and strong. So if you have a day ahead when you have to present or talk to a lot of people, perhaps a networking event, could be a good idea to do a session before you go out and start your day.
The idea is to get into using it on a regular basis so that you get the benefits of the resistance and the steam that moisturizes the airways and helps your mucous membranes along. It's not really particularly hard to maintain, I would say, as a device. I mentioned earlier that you can't use it on a plane, and you would probably want to use it before you travel, then maybe at the hotel, and then when you get back home. But it is portable enough for you to take with you on your travels. And I think that's really important because we want to get practical about business travel. If you're, for instance, a top flight athlete, then of course you'll probably be packed in the kits that are sent on to where you're going. But if you're an individual traveler and you're looking at your luggage allowance, you can put it in the hold luggage if you want, and you'll get use of it once you're in your location. And that's one way to go about it. So in the specific context of a toolkit that I mentioned, which is the thrust of this conversation, and as much of this being part of a traveler toolkit, it's one of those tools that you would leave at home that falls into the wellness step of the 6-step program that is the Farewell solution. Because the wellness step amounts to all the things that you may do to support your lifestyle that you may not necessarily take with you, or you could if you needed to. I just wanted to point that out because I can hear people now in the back. I'm not going to go around with a kettle, but if you've got a longer business trip and your performance is really important, then that's something you may want to consider. And to underpin that, I understand that it's quite popular with singers and performers who use their voice. I've seen 2 sets of people who use their voice to earn a living. who use the tool itself and regularly make sure it's part of their routine?
Singers, performers, they are used to humidifying their throat and airways, so they get the concept immediately. And we have many singers, performers, people who use the voice as a tool of their trade, using the device to keep their voice in condition.
Is there anything else about the device that I may have missed that you would think it's important for people to know?
We touched on it briefly, but there's a mouthpiece and there's a nose mask. And nose is actually the place where most germs, pathogens live, because the lower temperature than in your throat. It's important to humidify and cleanse both of them if that is your concern.
Right.
And also, if you go to bed, if you have narrow nasal passages, or if for some reason your nose is blocked, it'd be a good idea to use the nose mask to open your nasal passages, so you don't resort to mouth breathing at night. Again,
interesting. I forgot about
mouth,
that. Yeah.
Irritates your throat, all that. So that also is a potential benefit for better sleep.
Okay. As we round out the episode, where can people find out more about WellO2 in the UK?
So obviously our website, www.wello2.uk. We also on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. So look for WellO2 and you will find us.
All right, then. Just to recap, the benefits are immediate as well as long-term. They are applicable to our audience of business travelers, frequent flyers, as well as anyone who's seeking help. And as poignant as an example you gave, anyone whose breathing capacity might be on the wane and they want to do their best healthily to buttress that ability. Using the WellO2 device would be a good option because it's not consuming a lot of time for you to get to grips with it. It's something you can easily slot into a routine that you do, and its benefits are manifold, short and long term. Is there anything else I've missed?
I think that's a pretty good summary. Again, consistency is the key.
Right.
If you want to train your respiratory system, it's a long-term thing. And if you do it regularly, then if you go away for a few days, the benefits will remain. So it's like any other muscle.
Yeah.
Consistency is the key, and you don't use all the hard work immediately if you skip a day or two for whatever reason.
We are human.
And then there are the more short-term benefits. I talked about flying and need to use your voice a lot for whatever reason coming up. So just to help you perform better in those kind of situations.
Lovely. Thank you so much for coming on the NoJetStress podcast, Harri. We have a tradition here where we round out the show with a question. And the question is, what is your favorite destination anywhere around the world and why?
Oh, wow. Good question. I like to travel to new places, but I do have a soft spot for Spain. I went to school there. I had a wonderful year in Barcelona. And then a few years later, I met my partner in life in Madrid, spent quite a bit of time there. So Spain in general is very close to my heart.
And if I were to push you for a town, a city, a location, what would you say?
Well, I've spent most of my time in Barcelona and Madrid, but there's so much on offer in Spain. Just travel around. The culture is wonderful. Food is wonderful.
Right. Okay.
Weather is great.
I've also been to Barcelona, and for me, Barcelona trumps Madrid. I went to a fabulous wedding with my partner then. It was beautiful. It was picture perfect. I think the entire reception for the wedding, the bride's family were into art. So the reception was held in one of Anton Gaudi's houses. So it was quite a spectacle. It was absolutely beautiful. I'm going to chalk you down to Barcelona for my own bias.
I did enjoy Barcelona. I think Madrid is a bit more Spanish. I like both of them.
All right, then. Thank you so much for being on the NoJetStress podcast. I really appreciate your time. And thanks for sharing the WellO2 device with our audience. And wish you the best. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Chris. That was great.
Thank you for listening to the NoJetStress podcast. Remember, wherever you go, farewell.